good world. Welcome to the first episode of the Tyler Hill podcast of 2026. I am so glad you're here. I took a nice little break toward the end of the year and here at the beginning of the new year because that's what I love to do. I love to take breaks. I love to rest. That's one of the core things, I teach people in my work is how to not burn out, how to rest well, how to make it through life. And I just was not feeling like sticking to the calendar over the last month or so, and so I didn't. I took a nice little break, but here we are, and I am pumped for today for a few reasons. One is I have some incredibly big and special news to share with you. Secondly, I think I've got some really helpful and practical content that I think is going to be very valuable for everyone today, especially as it's January and some of us have fallen off of our New Year's resolutions, or some of us are trying to figure out how we even want to make the most of this new year. I think this episode will be wildly beneficial. And lastly, that starting today on this episode, we're going to start getting going on new interviews and new episodes. For the time being, I'm going to be doing less episodes in terms of interviews. We're going to start releasing every other Wednesday for the foreseeable future. That's because I have a handful of other projects going on and things that I'm going to tell you about here in just a second, so stay tuned. But yeah, we're going to release new episodes, or at least long-form interviews, every other Wednesday. And then from time to time, as I get inspired to maybe teach something or share some thoughts, maybe as they relate to current events or just some news of what I'm going through, then we will do special episodes from time to time. So unfortunately for some who love the interviews, we're going to be doing a little bit less, but I also think the quality of the interviews are going to get better. The quality of guests are going to continue to just be interesting and fun, but I don't want to dilute my pool too much, and I want to make sure that I give my guests what they deserve in terms of my preparation and growth. So with that being said, thanks for sticking around for every other Wednesday here on out for new episodes of the Tyler Hill podcast. Now, I have some big news, something I'm really, really excited to share with you. You might have seen it on Instagram or on Substack or the like. The big news is that I signed a book deal. And what that means is that here in a couple months, sometime this fall, I will be releasing my very first book, which is so exciting. And it's something that I've been working on for almost 5 years. It's been a labor of love. It's been one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's been incredibly difficult and discouraging, actually. But all that to say, I'm finally going to get to release my first book. It's going to be a book on belovedness. Of course, the working title is Born Beloved, and it will be coming out this fall. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, a little bit about goal setting and achieving dreams, and what does that realistically and practically look like? We live in a world of hustle culture and of life hacks and of optimization, which when you think about that, and I pay attention to a lot of that content, it would seem in many ways that this book project has been a failure. It's taken me 5 years to get here. So what does it look like to chase dreams? It took me almost 3 years to get Loyal Coffee off the ground with my friends. My wife and I, we've just quit our jobs. We're chasing some new dreams, as you might have heard on previous episodes of the podcast. I'm not one who has necessarily become a New York Times bestseller or, started multi-million-dollar businesses, but I've also made a lot of my dreams come true, and I've chased a lot of dreams, and I've lived what I would think sometimes is an interesting and fun life, and a lot of the work I do as a spiritual director and when I do life coaching from time to time is centered around how do we help people live their life to their fullest, achieve their dreams. How do they not burn out? One of the cohorts my wife and I run is called the Sustainable Life Lab, which is how do you design the life you want without burning out? And so much of the advice does not does not serve the soul, does not serve a holistic life. And yet I can find a lot of instances where I find maybe therapists or spiritual directors or really tender, loving people that sometimes also dampen somebody working hard or pursuing their dreams. All in the name of not burning out. And so what's the balance there? How do we become a people who maybe can make a life of adventure, a life of intrigue, a life that is worth living without burning out? And do we need to be only rest people and passive? Well, I don't think that's right. But do we need to just burn ourselves out and just embrace the modern hustle culture? Well, we know that also isn't working. So what I want to do is just kind of through the lens of getting this book deal and achieving this next dream, through the lens of starting my coffee company or my wife and some of her dreams, like the bakery we started and various projects that started and failed or started and are still going. What does it look like to design a life you live without burning out, and especially as it relates to the new year? So that's where we're headed today, and as what really sparked the idea of going about this was, of course, it's the new year and everybody's talking about their New Year's resolutions. But yesterday, I took off last year's big ass calendar off the wall. If you don't know what the big ass calendar is, there's this just incredible entrepreneur. His name is Jesse Itzler. Definitely a hero of mine, somebody I really look up to. And he has this product he sells every year called the Big Ass Calendar, and it's a calendar you can see the whole year in advance, and you can sort of plan each month. And what you do is you sort of reverse engineer your year. So you start with your Misogi, which is kind of the big goal. What's the one thing you want to define your year? And you put that on there, and then you start to build your work schedule and your life schedule around that thing. And then you also add little mini adventures. Jesse calls them Kevin's Rule days. We call them Wonder Days. So we plan 6 really specific mini adventures, which ensures that if nothing else happened in the year, we know at the very minimum our family will have taken 6 little mini adventures that will have sparked wonder in the family. And so when you put those down, you can ensure that your year will be a win, that it won't be bogged down by work or maybe family trips that you have to take or that you don't want to take. It's just a really good way of designing your year out. So I took down 2025 and I started building out 2026 with my wife. But I've saved my big ass calendars over the last handful of years. And what I noticed was that it was actually on my big ass calendar on 2024 to sign a book deal, to finish my manuscript and have a book deal signed. I wanted to sign my book deal on my birthday in 2024. And that made me really reflect on the last couple of years, because it's here in 2026 that my book deal has been signed and that I'm going to be releasing my first published book. Now, on one sense, that sounds a lot like a failure, right? I did not accomplish my Misogi that year. I didn't accomplish the big thing that I wanted to. And not only did I not do that in 2024, I also didn't do it in 2025. I'm a couple years late on that goal that I had set. And if you really think about it, even before I put that goal on the Big Ass Calendar in 2024, I had already been working on the book for a few years before that, trying to write it and learning what the publishing process was even like. Which is to say, I've been working on this project 5+ years. And, when I think about comparing myself to others, when I think about those voices that whisper in my head of inadequacy and, those are voices that we all have. The fact that I didn't accomplish this when I set out to, according to my goals, the fact that it's taken me almost 5 years to get this thing out, so much of that, according to the way many of us view our goals and the way society views goals, it could feel like a failure. And there's no doubt about it that the voice of failure, the whisper of failure, has been a guest in my mind. And now, though, with that being said, here I am in the editing process of the book. Here I am in the journey of working to promote the book, which we're going to do so many fun things I can't wait to tell you about. And I'm reflecting back on the last 5 years, and I'm not so sure I would change the story. Most days over the last 5 years, I've looked at the process with disdain and regret and frustration. And yet now, here I am getting to tell a story of endurance and resilience and faithfulness. And I'm not going to lie, it's a damn good story to tell. I'm getting to tell a story of a guy who didn't give up, who kept chasing his dreams, who faced dozens upon dozens of rejection letters and didn't let the bastards get me down, as it were. I kept going, I kept trying, and that's something I'm really proud of. And if I didn't experience that much failure, I wouldn't get to tell such a good story. Of course, this was not my mindset as I was going through it. But in hindsight, it's been such a joy to truly reflect on the way in which the struggle, the suffering, the endurance necessary to get this book to where it is, how necessary it was. And those are the very things that has made this a good story, that has made this inspiring to me and to my friends and to my family. This is the ingredients of a good story. Of course, it's not a failure. Everything that felt like a failure was really the ingredients that made this feel and makes it feel currently like a success. And so, as we sit here in the new year, as everybody is working on their New Year's resolutions, or maybe you've already kind of slipped up and are starting over, what does it look like to set a goal like this? What does it look like to set a big goal that does change your life, that is a Misogi, a defining feature of your life, that is worth enduring, that's worth suffering through? How do we set goals that ultimately we're proud of? Sure, I didn't get this goal necessarily when I wanted, but it is a goal I'm proud of. It's a goal that shaped me. It shaped my community. It shaped my career. There's so much goodness in and around this goal. What does that look like to set goals and achieve them in this way? Like I said, my wife and I, we're not famous, we're not rich, but I would say we are very wealthy on experience. We're very wealthy in adventure. We're very wealthy in wonder because we chase our dreams and we achieve a lot of our dreams that we set out to do. Obviously, there's big ones we're still going toward and new ones we're trying. But I wanted to do here, as it relates using my book and just some of the other fun things my wife and I have done, is talk about how do we chase these dreams and goals, and how do we holistically and practically chase them, achieve them, become them, that kind of thing. And I think the first point I would like to make here is that more often than not, our goals don't work out because we set bad goals. Our dreams don't work out because we set bad dreams. And there's kind of two pieces to this I wrote down while I was driving today in the car, getting kind of a download about this podcast episode, is we set a lot of bad dreams and bad goals. And this is what I mean. A lot of times when we get inspired, especially around the new year, about a goal that we want to set, we think about the outcome. We think about the result. We think about the encouragement we're going to get. We think about what other people are going to say to us and about us. We think about what it's going to look like on Instagram, but we never take into consideration what it will take to see that dream made manifest. We don't think about the struggle. We don't think about the suffering. And I wonder if more of us would achieve the goals we set out to achieve if one of the primary questions we ask when we set that goal or when we set that dream is, what am I willing to suffer for? What am I willing to suffer through? What is going to be really hard that I am willing to work through? Now, when I'm talking about suffering, I'm not talking about this bro-y kind of hustly, like, you must endure and inflict pain and suffering on your life to be the strongest and most elite person there ever was. Much of us endure and create such a great deal of unnecessary suffering in our life that we don't have to go through. Also, life itself presents so much suffering that is so wildly out of control. And so, what I'm not talking about is inflicting pain voluntarily onto our story or our creative endeavors or our dreams. But what I am saying is that everything is hard. To some degree, everything is hard. But not everything is hard and worthwhile. And there are many things that are hard, that are out of our control. But dreams are something that we can control. Dreams are something that we can choose. Goals that we set are things that we are choosing to embark on. And when we embark on these goals, we have to realize that they are hard, that they will be difficult. And you can choose, I believe, within this sphere of your life. Again, you can't choose all of your suffering, but you can choose the kind of suffering that you want to endure as it relates to the dreams you're chasing and the dreams you're going toward. And if you're not willing to go through the suffering that particular dream or that particular goal will present for you, then it might not be the goal for you, because to achieve it, it will be hard. It will be work. This is just part of the natural order of things. Why was I able to endure 5 years of this? Because I enjoyed the struggle. Yeah, I didn't enjoy waking up early to write with 2 kids and starting businesses, but I also loved it. I loved the struggle of getting up and trying to write and edit and getting feedback. And I did, in some ways, as hard as it was, like the challenge of getting rejection letters. Okay, what do I change? What do I grow? How do I make this better? There's all sorts of things that I enjoyed about the struggle of it. Was it hard? Yes. Every good writer will tell you that it's a struggle, that it's a slog. I also think about running. I took up running a couple years ago, and it's like, nobody loves running 10 miles. And yet people who run 10 miles love it. It is a struggle that's worth it. And more specifically, I love how I feel after I've struggled through a 10 or a 15-mile run. Even a 3-mile run, it feels so good. Are there numerous moments of suffering? Yes, but it's a suffering I signed up for and that I'm willing to go through because I love it. I think you're starting to get the point I would expect. What suffering are you willing to go through? So as you put a goal out there, really think about what it'll take. What will it take to lose those 10 pounds? Is there a part of that struggle that you might like? Will you like, doing the dieting or the exercise? When I became vegan, I really enjoyed learning how to cook. The truth is, I never knew how to cook really before. My cooking was very basic. I never made anything interesting. I never really followed recipes. I was just kind of a regular old Western diet person with a lot of frozen food and grated cheese and tortillas and fast food. And so part of what made the struggle of being vegan, because it is hard, part of what made it fun was I liked to endure how hard it was to cook. And having to learn how to cook and having to learn how to shop and all of those things. That was a struggle I was willing to go through for my health. So I'd like to jump in now to the second point here, which is I wonder what it might look like if our life was less about goals. If our New Year's resolutions was less about goals. This year, I'm trying to set less goals, and I'm more interested, a la Taylor Swift, I'm more interested in cultivating an era of my life or an era of this year. So for example, I'm calling this year my fashion era. One of the things I'm wanting to do is put together more interesting outfits. I'm wanting to express myself via my clothing. And so I'm calling this my fashion era. Now, there's not really a specific goal to it. But there are particular things I'm wanting to do. I'm posting outfits of the day on Instagram, and I've used some of my spending money to buy some clothes rather than other stuff I might want. But I don't actually have an outset of a goal. And I know so many people say if you don't get specific with your goals, you might not know if you achieve that. And there is a place for that. But what's interesting is I think when I think about the era, when I think about an era, I think a lot more about how I want to feel. Like what it's much more about a lifestyle and an energy. It's more about a feeling than it is about getting something done. Now, of course, this doesn't necessarily get you the job you want or help you pay off your debt, or there are particular goals that might deserve some very specific attention. But sometimes we get narrowed down so much by the specific nature of our goals that we miss out on developing a lifestyle that will turn us into the person that we actually are trying to become. So, for example, I would rather become somebody who is in a financially responsible era than somebody who just saved $10,000. Anybody can just save $10,000 once. But the difference of trying to cultivate the entirety of a lifestyle where you're bringing in more income, you're making better spending choices and investing choices, a financial era, cultivating an entire lifestyle of something might actually change your life in totality over the long haul. A question you might ask here is, what are you really pursuing when you set out to pursue a goal? So, for example, do you want to run a marathon or do you want to feel fit? Right? A lot of people simply want to feel fit. They want to lose some weight. They want to feel good in their bodies, but they set a goal, a random goal that actually isn't in alignment with how they want to feel. And then their whole year, all of their success is based on whether or not they achieve the marathon or not. But what if instead of saying, I have to do this marathon because my friends and family say it's important, or because it will look good on Instagram, and you said, I want to feel good in my body, and I want to do things over the course of this next year, that this is the era where I feel good in my body, where I'm wearing clothes that I like to wear, where I'm eating better, and there's a more holistic nature to what you're really pursuing. Deep down, I think that I wrote on my calendar that I wanted to get a book published in 2024. But I don't think that actually was the goal as much as it was I wanted to become a writer. And what didn't happen until recently was I didn't ever get a book published. But part of the reason that I didn't stop, and I think part of the reason I didn't fail, is not because I didn't do what my calendar said, but it was because deep down what I really wanted was to enter into my writer era, which meant getting up early to write, learning how the book publishing process goes. And I think I would have saved myself a lot of shame and a lot of heartache and a lot of negative self-talk if I simply would have said, this is my writing era. I think I probably would have still ended up with a book published this year, but I would have done it in a healthier, more positive way. One of the times this comes up often is when people come to me asking me about opening a coffee shop. And again, we might ask the question, do we really want that goal, or is there a feeling, or is there something more inspiring beneath it? So people will come to me often and they'll say, Tyler, I want to own a coffee shop. You owned a coffee shop and I wanted to do the same thing. And then they ask me for advice. And I would say 9.5 times out of 10, people come to me and they tell me all about their coffee shop, and they'll say things like, this is the kind of music I'm going to play in the cafe, and this is the kind of stage I'm going to have, this is the kind of coffee equipment we're going to use, this is the kind of coffee we're going to serve, and this is where our logo is, and they talk about all of these things. They talk about the sort of the shell of the company. But what they don't talk about is the lawyer they want to hire, or they don't talk about their HR policies or the ways they want to hire people and their onboarding process. They don't want to talk about the strategy of milk waste to make sure that they don't waste too much milk, or that because there's tariffs with some coffee. Well, not so much anymore, but what does that look like in coffee pricing when people expect coffee to be, $2 and $3 and $4 when really it should be priced at $7 or $8? And how do you deal with the market when the customers expect something different? Most people that come to me wanting to talk about this goal of opening a coffee shop don't actually talk about opening a coffee shop. They talk about the interior design. They talk about the music. They talk about gathering people. That's honestly the cores. Most people talk about gathering people. Okay, why is this important? Well, I hate being a dream killer, but the reality is most people are wanting to enter into an era of their life where they care about design, where they want to make beautiful things, and they want to gather people. Underneath the idea of saying, I want to start a coffee shop, really has nothing to do with business. Whenever I ask them business questions, they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to work on the holidays. I don't want to wake up this early. They actually don't want to do the business part of it, which is fine. But what I help them do is specifically identify what it is they're really looking for. So a lot of people actually want to start a coffee club, or they want to do interior design. They want to take a space and make it more beautiful. And then I offer them ideas like, well, what if you just got really into interior design and you redid your bathroom instead of starting a whole business and going into debt? Or what if you started a coffee club where you and 10 of your friends gathered and got really nerdy about coffee? Because the truth is, starting a coffee business will mean you're not going to get to be very nerdy about coffee. And most of the time, that's really what they want. They want to enter into an era of gathering people. They don't actually want to do the business. So what is it that you're really wanting to feel? What is it that you're really wanting to embody? Do you want to feel good in your body, or do you really want to run a marathon? Either is fine, but to get more clear about that, I think will move you forward. Deep down, I wanted to be a writer. I entered into my writer era. Deep down with my coffee company, I wanted to gather community. And that's what we did. But what made it almost impossible, and why I burned out and why I eventually had to sell it in part, was because I didn't really want to run a coffee company. I wanted to gather community. And for me, that's in part why I don't think I was able to sustain it for very long. Did I make something beautiful? Sure. Did I achieve a lot of dreams and goals on the way? Did I impact our community? Yes, yes, and yes. But it wasn't healthy. And I think it's because I didn't have the correct mindset. So with you might ask, what do I want to embody? Like if this was an era, this is just an era of health. We want to shop more wisely. We want to buy better food. What if you were in a healthy era where you just did a lot of little things a little bit healthier? Your goals might be a lot more obtainable and possible. So maybe it's less about the goals, more about the eras, how you feel, what you're trying to embody, rather than just one black and white pass or fail goal. I know that goes a little bit against the grain, but it's becoming more and more healthy for me. Me entering into my fashion era this year is very exciting. And I've already, I feel like, crushed so many things that I want to do in comparison to other years when I've said, oh, this is my goal, and I went out and said it. The last point I want to make today for my first episode here in the new year is one that I am so incredibly passionate about. And it has to relate to, I think, the mindset upon which we set out to achieve our goals. And I'd like you to consider, as you think about the goals you've already set, or maybe new goals that you are setting, what are you trying to transform? Because the best transformation is rarely the type of transformation we pursue. The mindset that so many people have, and this is what leads a lot of people into my office for soul work, is we are told a story that says who we are as we are is bad. That who we are as we are is not good enough. And we set goals based on trying to become someone else. We see somebody we admire and we try to be like them. We see the way somebody else has grown their business and we try to replicate that. We see somebody else's body or fashion or social media or whatever it is that they do, and we try to become them. And I am the chief offender of this. But never does that work. Transformation, trying to become someone else, is a perverted form of transformation. It's transformation done in vain. My friends, I'd like to encourage you, and this is something I'm really working on. This is part of my fashion era, is not trying to embrace the idea of a transformation becoming someone else. Rather, I want to transform into me. I want to transform into the person that God designed me to be. I think whenever we set out trying to transform into the people we listen to in podcasts or the people we see on Instagram, even the pastors on stage or our therapist or our spiritual, whoever we try to make of an icon in our life, I think whenever we're transforming away from ourselves, it's transformation that hurts us. It doesn't help us. How are we becoming ourselves? My friends, I'd like to remind you that you were designed with a divine DNA, that before the foundations of the earth, God considered you and knit you into form in the womb of your mother. God considered you, your name, your makeup, the way in which you were designed. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need to be transformed into something else. There is a version of you that is complete and good as you were designed. And one of the best things we can do as we set out to improve our lives or grow or enhance or evolve is not to consider who am I not and how do I become somebody else, but rather how do I become the version of me that was designed. For me, what's interesting is I am an entrepreneur. I love to go out and network. I have a sense of woo on the Strength Finders, but I'm also really introverted. And some of you, that might be a surprise. If you're my wife, that is not. But when you think about something like introversion, right, in a society that wants us to be out and about and moving and shaking, a lot of introverts will come to me or they'll go to their helper and they'll say, they might look online and say, how do I become less introverted? How do I fix myself and become more extroverted? That is not the question to be asking, I don't think. To me, the question is, how do I leverage my introversion to be the best version of me? To be an introvert doesn't mean you're sacrificing everything in the world. You're sacrificing yourself if you're trying to change yourself out of your DNA. Could it be that your particular makeup, which includes your introversion as an example, is the thing that will help you succeed and thrive and be the most happy and chase the most dreams? What if the path of least resistance, the path toward success, what if the river flowing downward freely and fully flows when you are being you, not when you're trying to be someone else? Bono says it. You see it on my Instagram all the time. Free yourself to be yourself. If only you could see yourself. So many people have set dreams and goals and aspirations and resolutions this year in trying to become someone else. And my friends, that is never the direction to go. God has made you beloved, holy, good, wonderful, and lovely. The fight should be to discover that and live into that, not to try and replicate someone else. The modern day discipleship or mentorship that just tries to make a bunch of clones, a bunch of sheep that all look exactly the same is not the model. The model is to follow the way of Christ. It's to follow the way of wisdom as it helps you thrive and become yourself. St. Augustine, he said, God, help me know myself so that I can know you. One of the analogies I love to use in this as we close is that a lot of the times God gave us a language. Every time, not a lot of times, all the time. God gave us a language to communicate with God. Ways in which we thrive, we experience joy. And when people will often kind of send me, and I'm sure I'll get a little bit of hate mail on this episode because I'm talking about finding ourselves and being ourselves. But like God made us the way God made us. And so, and could it be that the way in which we communicate with God, the way we relate with God, the way we find God the most is not by being someone else? And most like discipleship or mentorship programs, they say, this is the icon person. Just be like this pastor, or just be like this podcaster, or just be like this leader. And I would say that is not the goal. The goal is not to replicate someone else, because then we're going to be living their life, speaking their language, and then we're going to be left wondering why we're disconnected, why we're misaligned, why we are not experiencing life to its fullest. Well, it's because we're not evolving into our own self, the self that we were designed to live in. So maybe as we close today, you might ask yourself, are my goals set to become me, the me that God designed, or are they to become someone else that I think I should be? And if that's the case, I think your goals need to be reevaluated. And with that being said, there's a fine line here, but I'd like to leave you with one thing. You're allowed to quit. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to change your goals. Of course, there is endurance. I endured for many years trying to get to this book, but that was a suffering I was willing to endure. But there are many times where as we set out on a goal, maybe with bad intentions, goals set in vain or goals trying to be someone else other than ourselves, and then we realize this is not a suffering I want to endure. This is not exactly what I want to do or who I want to be. And if you find yourself at that place, you can quit. You can stop. You will be honoring yourself and the person you were designed to be by stopping and pivoting. I have quit a lot of things in my life, and every one of them that I've wisely quit has led me to more beauty. And there's been a lot of things that I've endured because I quit other things, and it's given me the capacity and the space to chase more of me. So if you're in a place where you're chasing a dream, trying to become something or someone, and it's not in alignment with your divine design, it's okay to stop and pivot. This is what it means to repent, to turn around, to change, to become back in alignment with who you are. So my friends, I would like to just let you go with this idea. Think about who you really want to be. Not as it relates to other people, but as it relates to your divine design. And what are you willing to endure to get there? And if there is a sense of like, I really enjoy how hard this is, I like going on runs, that's the thing to pursue, because it will all be hard. So you might as well pursue the hard that you like, the hard that you love, the hard you're willing to endure. And is the goal to become more of you, or is it to become someone else? Because this will change everything. My friends, thank you for joining me today on the first episode of the Tyler Hill Podcast in 2026. Here in two Wednesdays from now, you're going to have your first guest of the year. And I am so excited to keep growing here on the podcast with you. In the meantime, would you be willing to follow me on Instagram? The Tyler is my Instagram handle. And with my book coming out, which I'll talk about more on other episodes, the more you engage with my content right now, the more it will help me, believe it or not, with the book. And so I will shamelessly be begging for engagement on the internet for people to follow my email list. You can do that at tylerhill.net/Monday. And for people to just simply like and share my posts on Instagram, it goes farther than you think. So, last but not least, if you could leave a good review and 5-star this podcast, that also would help tremendously. My friends, I hope you have a great rest of your January. Grace and peace, all the love, and may you become freely and fully yourself, and may all your goals lead you to that.